My father didn't ask if he could bring 30 relatives to my home for Christmas. He simply announced it as a gift I was too ungrateful to refuse. Standing in my driveway, watching the convoy of rusted sedans and borrowed trucks arrive 3 days early, I realized this wasn't a family reunion, it was a siege, and they weren't here to celebrate my success. They were here to carve it up. The silence of the parking garage at Northmere Compliance Group was usually the best part of my day. It was the sound of a job done, of boxes checked, of regulations met. I sat in my sedan for a moment, just breathing in the cold, recycled air of late December. The year had been a brutal marathon of audits and regulatory shifts, and my brain felt like a wrung-out sponge. I was 33 years old, successful by every metric that mattered to the Census Bureau, and completely exhausted. I turned the key, and the engine hummed to life. The dashboard clock glowed a soft green. It was 5 p.m. on the Friday before Christmas week. The plan was simple. I was going to drive home to my quiet, meticulously organized house in Holleridge. I was going to order Thai food. I was going to turn off my phone. For the next week, my only company would be a stack of unread novels and the snow falling silently against the glass of my living room windows. It was a beautiful, selfish plan. I had earned it. My phone rang just as I merged onto the highway. The Bluetooth display flashed the name I dreaded most when my defenses were down. Dad. I debated letting it go to voicemail. I should have let it go to voicemail. But the conditioning ran deep. You answer the phone because if you do not, it means you are arrogant. It means you have forgotten where you came from. I tapped the button on the steering wheel. Hi, Dad, I said, keeping my voice level. Jenny. His voice filled the car, booming with that artificial salesman cheer that always made my shoulders tense up. It was the voice he used when he was winning a hand of poker or selling a car with a transmission issue. I was just calling to give you the good news, he said. I tightened my grip on the wheel. What good news? I know you have been working yourself to the bone up there in that big fancy office, he continued, steamrolling past my question. And I got to thinking that no daughter of mine should be alone for the holidays. It is not right. It is not what family does. So I fixed it. My stomach did a slow, sickening roll. Fixed it how? I rounded up the troops. Jenny, we are coming to you. All of us. I nearly swerved into the next lane. What do you mean? All of you? I asked, my voice rising. Everyone, he said, sounding delighted with himself. Me? Your Uncle Dale? Aunt Sarah? The cousins? Even old Aunt Marge is making the trip. I rented a big van for the cargo, and the rest are convoying up. We will be there in 3 days. It is going to be a real Reed family Christmas, just like the old days, but in a house that actually fits us all. I did the math in my head. The Reed family was not small. Between the siblings, the spouses, and the army of second cousins. He was talking about a mob. Dad, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my throat. My house is not a hotel. How many people are we talking about? Oh, stop worrying about the details, he scoffed. 30, maybe 32 if the marshals decide to drive up last minute. 30 people. Dad, no, I said firmly. I cannot host 30 people. I have 2 guest rooms. I have 1 oven. I'm not prepared for this. You cannot just spring 30 people on me 3 days before Christmas. There was a pause on the line. The heavy, disappointed silence he had perfected when I was 6 years old. Genesis, he said, his voice dropping the cheer, replacing it with a wounded gravity. This is not about the oven. This is about us celebrating you. Do you know how proud I am? I have been telling everyone about your promotion. I told them. Genesis made it. She is the one who got out. And now you want to tell your Aunt Sarah she cannot come see your success? After she babysit you for free when I was working double shifts? The guilt hook snagged me right in the chest, exactly where he knew it would. It was the ancient narrative of our family. I was the one who left, so I owed a debt that could never quite be paid off. I am not saying they cannot see it, I stammered, hating how quickly I retreated. I am saying I cannot house them. There is no room. We do not mind squeezing in, he said, the cheer returning instantly now that he sensed blood. We are family. We have slept on floors before. We will bring air mattresses. It is about being together. Do not be like that. Jenny. Do not be the person who gets too big for her own people. I stared at the taillights blurring red in front of me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say that I was not too big. I was just tired. I wanted to say that my house was my sanctuary, not a showroom for his pride. But the words stuck. I had spent 33 years trying to prove I was not selfish, and he knew exactly which button to press to reboot that programming. Fine, I whispered, defeated. That is my girl. He roared. We will see you Tuesday. Get the eggnog ready. The line went dead. I drove the rest of the way home in silence, but the peace was gone. The quiet interior of my car felt like a cage. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my 2-story colonial in Holleridge, the house did not look like a sanctuary anymore. It looked like a target. By Saturday morning, I was manic. I was on my hands and knees in the foyer, scrubbing the grout lines of the tile with a toothbrush. The house was spotless. I paid a cleaning service to come every 2 weeks, and they had just been there on Wednesday. There was not a speck of dust on the baseboards, but it did not feel clean enough. It felt like it needed to be sterilized. The doorbell rang, and I jumped, nearly knocking over the bucket of soapy water. I scrambled up, wiping my hands on my yoga pants, and opened the door. Tessa Lang stood there, holding 2 large coffees and wearing a look of deep concern. Tessa lived next door. She was a graphic designer with a spine of steel and a mouth that had no filter, and she was the only person in Holleridge who knew exactly how much therapy it had taken for me to set boundaries at work. I saw you through the window, she said, walking past me without waiting for an invitation. You were scrubbing the floor like you are trying to erase a crime scene. What happened? I took the coffee she offered, my hands shaking slightly. My dad called. I said, he is coming for Christmas. Tessa paused, taking a sip of her latte. Okay, is that a scrubbing the grout level emergency? It is just your dad. He is bringing everyone, I said, staring into the dark liquid in my cup. 30 people. Tessa. 30 relatives. They are coming here, to this house, in 3 days. Tessa choked on her drink. She coughed, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. I am sorry. Did you say 30? As in 30? Yes, and you said no, right? You told him that is insane? I walked into the living room and collapsed onto the beige sofa. I tried. I said weakly, he did the thing, the proud dad thing. The whole we sacrificed so you could have this speech. He made it sound like they are coming to honor me. If I said no, I would look like a monster. Tessa sat down on the coffee table, facing me. She set her cup down hard. Genesis, listen to me. You are not a monster. You are a person with a 3-bedroom house and a high-stress job. Hosting 30 people is not a holiday. It is a natural disaster, I know, I said, rubbing my temples. But I cannot uninvite them now. He has already told everyone. If I turn them away, I am the villain for the next 10 years. So you are going to let them invade? Tessa asked. You know how they get. You told me about the time your uncle sold your bike to pay a gambling debt. That was a long time ago, I said, though the memory still stung. Look, I can manage it. I am a compliance officer. I manage chaos for a living. I just need rules. I stood up, pacing the room, feeling the adrenaline of problem-solving kick in. It was a defense mechanism. If I could organize the nightmare, maybe it wouldn't hurt me. I will set strict boundaries, I said, nodding to myself. No overnight guests except Dad. Everyone else gets a hotel. I will send a list of nearby motels, and food will be potluck. I am not cooking for 30 people. Fixed hours. 2. They can come over at noon and they have to leave by 9. Tessa looked skeptical. Have you told your dad these rules? I will call him right now, I said. I pulled out my phone and dialed before I could lose my nerve. He answered on the second ring, the background noise loud and chaotic. Hey, Dad? I said, keeping my voice professional. I am making a schedule for the visit. I need to let you know that I can only host you at the house. There isn't room for everyone else to sleep here. so they will need to book rooms at the Best Western off the highway, and we will need to coordinate food because I cannot cater for 30. Harold laughed. It was a dismissive, belly-shaking sound. Oh, Jenny, you worry too much, he said. I already handled it. What do you mean? I asked. I told everyone not to worry about hotels, he said breezily. I told them you insisted. I said, Genesis has plenty of room. She would be insulted if you spent money on a hotel when family is in town. Everyone was so touched. Honey, Aunt Marge actually cried. She said, that girl never forgot us. The room spun slightly. Dad, I said, my voice tight. I do not have 30 beds. They brought sleeping bags, he shouted over the noise. It will be like a slumber party. Don't be a spoilsport. We are saving money. Jenny, not everyone has your bank account. We have to look out for each other. He hung up before I could argue. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at Tessa. He told them I insisted. I whispered, he told them I would be insulted if they got hotels. Tessa stood up, her face hard. He is cornering you, she said. He is making it so that if you set a boundary, you are not just saying no to him, you are calling 30 people liars and cheapskates. It is worse than that, I said, feeling the weight of it settle on my shoulders. He is using my name to promise things I cannot give. Tessa walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You can still stop this, she said. Lock the door. Leave town. Come stay at my place and turn off the lights. I shook my head. I can't. If I hide, they win. They will say I think I am better than them. I just have to get through it. It is 4 days. I can survive 4 days. Tessa looked at me like I was walking into a fire with a bucket of gasoline. Good luck, Jenny, she said softly, but count your silverware. Sunday brought the first physical breach of my perimeter. I was in the kitchen, furiously meal prepping vegetable lasagnas that I hoped would stretch to feed an army. When a delivery truck pulled into the driveway, it was a Sunday courier service, the kind you pay extra for. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to the door. The driver, a young man in a blue uniform, held a thick, padded envelope. Delivery for Harold Reed, he said, glancing at his clipboard. I frowned. Harold Reed doesn't live here. I am Genesis Reed. Address is correct, he said, turning the package so I could see the label. It was definitely my address. 42, Briar Lane. But the name was purely my father's. I hesitated. My father lived 3 hours away in a rented duplex. Why was he getting mail sent to my house? And not just mail. Courier packages. I will take it, I said. Reaching out, I signed for it and took the package inside. It was heavy for its size. I set it on the kitchen island and stared at it. The return address was a P.O. box in the state capital. It looked official, legal, maybe, or financial. A cold prickle of unease walked down my spine. It was one thing to crash my holiday. It was another thing to use my address as his own. It implied a permanence, a sense of ownership that made my skin crawl. I resisted the urge to open it. That was a line I would not cross. Not yet. I shoved the envelope into the junk drawer, but its presence felt like a radioactive isotope pulsing in my kitchen. Later that afternoon, my phone started buzzing with notifications. I had silenced calls, but the text messages were getting through. A number I did not recognize. Hey Genesis, it's Cousin Brenda. Dad said you're hosting the Big Bash. Can you make sure the guest room has hypoallergenic pillows? My sinuses are terrible in the winter. Another number. Jenny. This is Uncle Dale. Is there space in your garage for my truck? I don't want to leave it on the street. It's got my tools in it. And then, a Facebook notification. I rarely use social media, mostly keeping a profile to see photos of friends' babies. But I clicked on the alert. Harold Reed had tagged me in a post. It was a photo of my house, a photo I had never sent him. He must have pulled it from the real estate listing when I bought it 3 years ago. The caption read, "So proud of my daughter, Genesis. She's opening up her beautiful estate to the whole family this year. It's going to be the Reed family headquarters for the holidays. God is good. Blessed family, first success." I stared at the word estate. My house was a standard 3-bedroom suburban home on a quarter-acre lot. It was nice. Yes. It was the nicest house anyone in my family had ever owned, but calling it an estate was a deliberate inflation. He was selling a fantasy, and he was selling me as the provider of that fantasy. The comments were a stream of praise. What a good daughter. You raised her right? Harry, can't wait to see the mansion. My chest felt tight. He was setting expectations I could not possibly meet. When they arrived and saw a normal house with one downstairs bathroom and a small dining room, they were going to be disappointed, and somehow, that disappointment would become my fault. My phone rang again. This time, the ID said Marlowe Price. Marlowe was my second cousin, about my age. He was charming, handsome, and had never held a job for longer than 6 months. He called himself an entrepreneur. I picked up. Hello, Marlowe. Cousin, he shouted. I saw the post. The estate. Huh? Look at you. Living the dream. You are the rich one now. Official. It was said with a laugh, but the undertone was sharp. It was the sound of someone measuring my worth and finding it heavy enough to take a piece of, "It is just a house." Marlowe, I said, "It is not an estate. Dad is exaggerating, always so modest." He purred. Hey, quick question. I was looking at property values in Holleridge. Pretty steep. You got a big mortgage on that place? Or did you pay cash? The question was so invasive I blinked. That is none of your business. Marlowe. Whoa, touchy. He laughed. Just asking. Dad said you might have some extra rooms that aren't bedrooms, like an office or a den. I'm bringing a friend, and we need a little privacy, if you know what I mean. No, I said sharply. No friends, just family, and I'm working in my office until the holiday starts. It is off limits. All right, Your Highness, he said. See you Tuesday. I hung up, my hand shaking. Your Highness. The resentment was already there, baked into the interactions before they even crossed the town line. They didn't see me as Genesis. They saw me as a walking ATM with a guest room. I needed a sanity check. I dialed Elaine Voss. Elaine was my mother's best friend before Mom passed away 10 years ago. Elaine was the only person who saw my father clearly. She didn't buy the charm. Hello, sweetie, Elaine answered. Her voice was like warm tea. Elaine, he is bringing 30 people, I said, skipping the pleasantries. He is bringing everyone. There was a long silence on the other end. Oh, Genesis, she sighed. I saw the Facebook post. I was hoping it was just Harold talking big. It is real. I said, they are coming Tuesday. Why is he doing this? He knows I hate crowds. He knows I work 80 hours a week. Elaine's voice dropped, becoming serious. Harold never brings a crowd without a reason. She said, he likes an audience, Genesis. But more than that, he likes pressure. If he gets you alone, you can argue with him. You can use that logic of yours. But if he has 30 people standing behind him, then he is not just Harold asking for a favor. He is the patriarch leading the tribe. And you are the one standing in the way. A favor? I asked. What favor? I do not know, she said. But watch your wallet, honey, and watch your peace. Do not start a war if you don't have to, but do not let them occupy your territory without a fight. I hung up feeling colder than I had before. I walked to the front window and looked out at the snowy street. It was dark now. The streetlights cast long, orange shadows on the snow. My house felt fragile. The walls felt too thin. I had always relied on social contracts to keep me safe. I assumed that if I was polite, people would be polite back. I assumed that if I said no, people would listen. But my father did not operate on social contracts. He operated on leverage. I grabbed my keys and my coat. Where are you going? I asked myself out loud. To the hardware store. I spent the next 3 hours drilling and wiring. I wasn't handy, but fear is a powerful motivator. I installed a video doorbell facing the street. I climbed a ladder and put a floodlight camera over the garage. Then, feeling like a paranoid spy, I installed a small, unobtrusive camera on the bookshelf in the entryway, facing the front door. Finally, I replaced the deadbolt on my office door with a smart lock that required a keypad code. I stood back, looking at the blinking blue light of the hub on my router. "You are crazy," I whispered to myself. "You are turning your home into a fortress for Christmas. It is just your family. They are loud and messy and pushy, but they are not criminals." But as I looked at the black eye of the camera lens in the hallway, I didn't feel crazy. I felt prepared. I told myself it was just for safety. With 30 people in the house, doors would be left unlocked. Strangers would be coming in and out. It was just responsible homeownership. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach where the anxiety lived, I knew the truth. I wasn't building a security system to keep strangers out. I was building a witness for what was about to happen inside. I went to bed that night, but I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the silence of the house, counting the hours until the invasion. 3 days. I had 3 days of my life left before everything changed. Monday passed in a blur of anxiety and last-minute logistics. I bought pillows. I bought bulk pasta. I moved my fragile knickknacks into the closet of the master bedroom. On Tuesday morning, the forecast called for a blizzard, but the sky was a hard, bright blue. I was in the kitchen, drinking my 3rd cup of coffee, when I heard the honking. It wasn't a polite tap of the horn. It was a rhythmic, celebratory blaring. I walked to the window. They were here. A caravan of 5 cars and a battered rental van was turning into my driveway. They pulled onto the grass, churning up the pristine snow I had shoveled yesterday. Car doors flew open. My father stepped out of the lead car, a silver sedan that looked newer than I remembered. He was wearing a Santa hat and a coat that looked expensive. He threw his arms wide, addressing the house, addressing the neighborhood, addressing the world. "We are here," he shouted. I watched as people poured out of the vehicles, cousins I hadn't seen in 5 years, a great aunt struggling with a walker, Marlowe, wearing sunglasses despite the winter glare, children I didn't recognize running across my lawn. They were 3 hours early. I looked at the clock. It was 9 in the morning on a Tuesday. I was supposed to be logging into a conference call in 20 minutes. I froze. My hand gripped the curtain. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to lock the door, to run out the back, to hide. But then I saw my father look up at the window. He couldn't see me through the glare, but he waved anyway, a big, confident wave that said he owned the place. I let go of the curtain. I smoothed my sweater. I put on the mask I wore for board meetings and audits, the mask that said I was calm. I was in control, and nothing could hurt me. I walked to the front door and unlocked it. Showtime. The moment I opened the front door, the cold air rushing in was the last breath of peace I would take for days. Harold Reed stood on my welcome mat, his arms spread wide like a ringmaster opening a circus. Behind him, the driveway was a gridlock of vehicles. Trunks popped open, revealing not just overnight bags, but large, hard-shell suitcases, plastic bins, and, my stomach dropped, a rolled-up air mattress tucked under Cousin Marlowe's arm. "Surprise!" my father bellowed, stepping forward to envelop me in a hug that smelled of peppermint schnapps and Old Spice. We made good time. The roads were clear, and I told everyone, why wait? Christmas starts when the family gets together. I stood frozen in his embrace, my arms pinned to my sides. My brain was firing frantically, trying to locate the script I had rehearsed, the rules, the hotel list, the boundaries. "Dad," I said, my voice sounding small and thin against the wind. "You are 3 days early, I am working, and we discussed the hotels." He pulled back, holding me by the shoulders, his face arranging itself into a mask of jovial confusion. "Hotels?" He laughed, looking over his shoulder at Aunt Marge, who was struggling up the walkway with a casserole dish covered in foil. "Did you hear that? Marge? She thinks we are going to stay in some sterile motel when we have family right here." Aunt Marge stopped, looking at me with wide, watery eyes. "Oh, honey," she wheezed, "I couldn't sleep in a strange bed. My back is terrible. Your father said you insisted we stay." He said you were so worried about us driving back and forth in the snow. The trap snapped shut. It was elegant in its cruelty. If I enforced the rule now, I wasn't just managing logistics. I was evicting an old woman with a bad back into the snow. I was calling my father a liar in front of 30 people. I looked at my father. His eyes were hard, daring me to speak, even as his mouth held a smile. Right, I choked out. Of course. Come in. The dam broke. 30 people is an abstract number until they are inside your hallway. They flowed in like a tide, bringing the wet, gritty slush of the driveway with them onto my hardwood floors. The noise was instantaneous, a cacophony of greetings, complaints about the cold, and demands for the bathroom. I was swept aside, pressed against the wall near the coat rack as my sanctuary was colonized. Cousin Brenda marched past me, dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel that gouged a white line into the wood floor. "Which room is mine?" she shouted over the din. "I need to be near the bathroom." "Dad," I hissed, grabbing his elbow as he tried to direct traffic. "Dad, where are they all going to sleep?" "I have 2 guest beds." "2? Don't worry about it." "Jenny," he said, patting my hand dismissively, "we will make it work. Kids on the floor, adults in the beds. Marlo can take the couch. We are adaptable. We are reeds." He moved away before I could respond, clapping his hands. "All right, everyone, let's get settled. Make yourselves at home. What is Genesis's is yours." I watched, helpless, as the transformation began. It wasn't just an arrival. It was a hostile takeover masked as a party. Within an hour, my house was no longer mine. It had become a loud, chaotic committee meeting where I had no voting rights. I retreated to the kitchen to find water, only to find Aunt Sarah rearranging my cupboards. "Nothing is in the right place, honey," she clucked, moving my spices to a shelf I couldn't reach without a stool. "How do you cook like this? And why is everything so gray? It is like a hospital in here. You need some color, some life. It is minimal." "Aunt Sarah," I said, trying to grab a glass. "It is how I like it. It is lonely," she corrected. Slamming a cabinet shut, it screams single. "Genesis. A house this big needs noise. It needs a husband." I gritted my teeth. "I am happy." "Sarah, are you?" She looked at me with a pity that felt like a slap. "Your dad says you work 80 hours a week. He says you have no life outside that office. We are just here to help you remember what matters." I stiffened. My father had been briefing them. He was painting a picture of me not as a successful professional, but as a broken, work-addicted spinster who needed saving. This wasn't a visit. It was an intervention. I walked out of the kitchen, needing air, and nearly collided with Uncle Dale and my father in the hallway. They stopped talking abruptly as I approached. "She looks tired," Dale was saying, his voice low. "She is exhausted," my father replied, shaking his head. "She needs us to straighten her out. She has lost perspective. Dale, too much money, not enough sense." They saw me then. My father's face shifted instantly to a bright, beaming smile. "There she is, the hostess with the mostest. We were just saying how great the place looks. Jenny. Though Dale thinks that wall," he pointed to the load-bearing wall between the living room and dining room, "should come down. Open it up. Better flow. I am not taking down walls." "Dad," I said, my voice flat. "Just an idea," Dale said, holding up his hands. "I know a guy. Could do it cheap. Increase the value." I kept walking, retreating to my office, but the door was locked. Then I remembered. I had installed the smart lock. Thank God. I punched in the code, listening to the whir of the deadbolt, and slipped inside. I leaned against the door, breathing in the silence. It was the only room they hadn't touched. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tessa. "I see cars on the lawn. Do you need a rescue? Or a flamethrower?" I typed back. "They are here 3 days early. They are staying. All of them. I am hiding in the office." Tessa replied instantly. "Do not let them in camp. Kick them out." "I can't." I wrote. He used Aunt Marge as a human shield. I sat at my desk, trying to focus on work, but the noise bled through the walls. Thumping footsteps upstairs, the roar of the television in the living room, someone shouting about a missing toiletry bag. Around 4 in the afternoon, there was a knock on the office door. Genesis? It was my father. I opened it a crack. Come out, he said. There is someone I want you to meet. I followed him into the living room. The furniture had been rearranged. My sofa was now pushed against the window, blocking the view, and the armchairs were circled around the TV like a campfire. Standing near the fireplace was a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing a fleece jacket with a logo embroidered on the chest. Larkcomo, Realty. He held a clipboard and was looking at my crown molding with the critical eye of a butcher assessing a side of beef. This is Greg, my father said, slapping the man on the back, old buddy of mine from high school. He was just passing through town and I told him to stop by for a drink. Greg turned and smiled. It was a shark's smile, all teeth and gums. Nice place. Genesis, he said. Great bones. You have got some dry rot on the porch. Though, did you know that? Who are you? I asked, ignoring the critique. Just a friend. My father interjected quickly. Greg is in real estate. He has a great eye. Greg tapped his clipboard. Market in Holleridge is hot right now. Genesis. A place like this? With a little work. Maybe finish that basement. Open up the kitchen. You could be looking at $650, maybe $700,000. Why are you valuing my house? I asked, stepping forward. Just shop talk. Greg laughed, holding up his hands. Cannot turn it off. It is a sickness. But seriously, Harold tells me you are sitting on a lot of equity here. Shame to let it just sit there when it could be working for you. My father nodded sagely. That is what I told her. Greg, it is dead money. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. This wasn't a social call. This man wasn't just passing through. My father had brought a realtor into my home to appraise it in front of me. I am not selling, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. And I am not refinancing, so the equity can stay dead. Greg looked at my father. A quick, confused glance. Harold laughed. A nervous, barking sound. She is cautious. Greg, always has been. Doesn't understand leverage. Come on, let me show you the backyard. They walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of my rearranged living room, my heart hammering a warning rhythm against my ribs. Dinner was a nightmare of paper plates and forced cheer. We ate lasagna standing up because there weren't enough chairs. By 10 o'clock, most of the relatives had dispersed to claim sleeping spots. The air mattresses were inflated, filling the living room with the sound of squeaking rubber. I was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher for the 3rd time. When the air in the room changed, my father walked in. Uncle Dale followed him, then Aunt Sarah. It was a delegation. They sat down at the small kitchen table. My father gestured to the empty chair. Sit down for a minute. Jenny, we need to have a family talk. I wiped my hands on a towel and remained standing. I prefer to stand. Suit yourself. Dale grunted. My father clasped his hands on the table. He looked grave, the way he did when he was about to deliver bad news that was actually a sales pitch. Genesis, we have been talking about the family, about the legacy. I waited. You know Uncle Dale has been running Reed Family Outdoor Supply for 20 years. He continued, it is the heart of this family. It put food on the table when you were a kid. I remembered Reed Family Outdoor Supply. It was a dusty surplus store 3 towns over that mostly sold expired MREs and hunting knives. I didn't recall it putting food on my table. That had been my mother's 2 jobs. But I didn't interrupt. The economy has been tough, Dale said. Staring at his knuckles, big box stores, Amazon, they are killing the little guy. We are in a bit of a tight spot. Cash flow issues. We need to modernize, my father said, leaning forward. New inventory, a website, marketing. But the banks? They do not understand vision. They only look at the past. Here it comes. I thought, we found a lender who gets it. My father said, private capital, good rates, but because the business has had some bad quarters, they need a guarantor. Someone with a solid credit history, someone with assets. He looked at me. They all looked at me. We need a co-signer. Jenny. Dale said. Just for a year. Once the new stock comes in, we refinance, and your name is off. You won't have to pay a dime. It is just a signature. I looked at the three of them. My father, the dreamer who gambled with money he didn't have. Uncle Dale, who had never balanced a ledger in his life. And Aunt Sarah, the enforcer. No, I said. The word hung in the air, stark and simple. My father blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I cannot co-sign a loan for the business. Why not? Dale demanded, his face flushing red. You think we aren't good for it? It is not that. I lied. It is my job. I work in compliance for a financial firm. I am strictly prohibited from carrying high-risk debt or guaranteeing commercial loans for family members. It is a conflict of interest. I could lose my license. It was a partial truth. Stretched thin. But it was the safest shield I had. Harold stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Conflict of interest? He spat. We are your blood. Genesis. We are not a conflict. We are the reason you are standing there in your designer sweater. Do you think you got here by yourself? I worked for everything I have. Dad, you had support. Aunt Sarah shrilled. Who drove you to school? Who bought you that laptop for college? I bought that laptop, I said quietly. With money I made waiting tables. Oh, so now you are rewriting history? My father shouted. You are ungrateful. Genesis, that is what you are. You sit here in this big house, hoarding your money, watching your uncle lose his livelihood, and you hide behind some corporate rulebook? It is not hoarding to say no to a loan. I said, my hands shaking. It is when you have plenty and we have nothing, Dale yelled. You owe us. You got out. You made it. You think that luck just happened? We stepped back so you could step up, and now you look down on us. I looked at my father. I wanted him to defend me. I wanted him to say, leave her alone. She has done enough. But he didn't. He looked at me with cold, calculating eyes. I am disappointed. Genesis, he said softly. I thought I raised a daughter who cared about people, not just net worth. I guess I failed. He turned and walked out of the kitchen. Dale and Sarah followed, casting dark looks over their shoulders. I stood alone in the hum of the refrigerator, trembling. It wasn't just anger. It was grief. They didn't want to see me. They wanted to consume me. I took a deep breath and started to wipe down the counters, needing the repetitive motion to calm my nerves. That was when I noticed it. The junk drawer was slightly ajar. I pulled it open. The assortment of rubber bands and batteries was there, but the padded envelope, the one from the courier service addressed to Harold Reed, was gone. I froze. I hadn't moved it. I scanned the kitchen. Had I thrown it out? No. I walked into the living room. It was dark, illuminated only by the glow of the television. Cousin Marlowe was asleep on the couch. My father's duffel bag was sitting on the floor near the recliner where he had been sitting earlier. I knew I shouldn't touch it. It was an invasion of privacy. But he had invaded my home. He had invaded my life. I knelt down and unzipped the side pocket of the bag. There it was, the envelope. It had been torn open. I pulled out the paper inside. I angled it toward the light of the TV. It was a notice from a company called North Star Lending. Final notice. Past due. I scanned the text, my heart hammering so hard I felt dizzy. It referenced a balance of $12,000, and then I saw the account holder's name. Genesis A. Reed. I stared at the paper. I had never heard of North Star Lending. I didn't have a $12,000 loan. I looked at the date on the notice. The account had been opened 6 months ago. I shoved the paper back into the envelope and put it back in the bag. I zipped it shut. I stood up, backing away. My father wasn't just trying to get me to co-sign a loan. He had already taken one out. I needed to get out of the house. I grabbed my keys and my coat. If anyone asked, I would say I needed milk. I didn't go to the store. I drove straight to Tessa's house next door. I pounded on her door. It was 11:30 at night. Tessa opened it, wearing a bathrobe and holding a glass of wine. Jenny? She looked at my face and pulled me inside. What happened? Did they set the house on fire? I need your computer, I said, my voice sounding strange and detached, and I need you to help me pull a credit report. Tessa didn't ask questions. She led me to her dining room table and opened her laptop. I sat down, my fingers flying across the keys. I entered my social security number. I answered the security questions. What was the make of your first car? What street did you grow up on? The report generated, a spinning wheel on the screen. Then, the list appeared. I scrolled past my mortgage, past my student loans, past my one credit card, and there they were. North Star Lending, personal loan. Opened June 12th. Balance, $12,400. Rapid Cash Services, line of credit. Opened August 4th. Balance, $4,500. Velocity Auto Finance, co-signer status. Opened September 1st. Vehicle, 2024. Ford F-150. I gasped. The truck. My father had bought a new truck in September. He told me he had traded in his old one. He had used me as a co-signer. How? Tessa whispered, reading over my shoulder. How did he do this without you knowing? He knows everything, I said, staring at the screen. He knows my social. He knows my mother's maiden name. He knows where I bank. And I remembered the electronic signature documents I signed for my house years ago. He has copies of my old tax returns. I said, from when he used to do my taxes in college. He must have forged my signature, or used an e-signature platform. This isn't just family drama. Jenny, Tessa said, her voice serious. This is identity theft. This is a felony. I slumped back in the chair. He framed it as a Christmas visit, I whispered, but he is here because the bills are coming due. That is why the courier came to my house. He changed the address so I wouldn't see the delinquency notices at his place. He is hiding the evidence in my own home. And the realtor? Tessa asked. He wants me to refinance, I realized. He wants to pull equity out of the house to pay off the debts he racked up in my name before I find out. He is trying to fix the crime by committing a bigger one. I felt like I was going to throw up. What do I do? I asked. Tessa closed the laptop. You need a lawyer, not a family lawyer, a shark. I pulled out my phone. I had a contact. Maren Holt. She was a litigator I had met at a compliance conference once. She was terrifying. I cannot call her now. It is midnight. Text her. Tessa said. Tell her it is an emergency. Tell her your father stole your identity. I sent the text. Maren, this is Genesis Reed. I have a situation. Identity fraud involving a family member who is currently in my house. I need advice. The response came 3 minutes later. Call me. I stepped onto Tessa's back porch and dialed. Maren's voice was crisp, awake, and devoid of sympathy, which was exactly what I needed. Start from the beginning, she said. I told her everything. The loans, the truck, the arrival of the 30 relatives, the pressure to sign for the business. When I finished, there was a pause. Listen to me carefully. Genesis, Maren said, you are in a dangerous position. He has surrounded you with witnesses who are loyal to him. He is creating a pressure cooker to force you to sign documents that will legitimize the fraud he has already committed. If you sign a refinance deal, or a consolidation loan, you might inadvertently accept liability for the debts he forged. So I kick him out? I asked. No, Maren said, not yet. If you kick him out tonight, he destroys the evidence. He claims it was a misunderstanding. He gaslights the family into thinking you are crazy. You need to secure the proof. What do I do? Go back to the house, she said. Act normal. Do not confront him. Do not let him know you know. If he brings up money, you say 5 words. I will think about it. Nothing else. Do not say yes. Do not say no. Just delay. And then? Document everything, Maren instructed. Pictures of the letters. Save the voicemails. And get out of that house as soon as you can safely do so. Come to my office tomorrow morning. I hung up. I looked at Tessa. I have to go back in. I said, you can't. Tessa said, stay here. I have to. I said, if I don't, he wins. I have to play the part. I walked back across the snowy lawn to my house. It looked warm and inviting from the outside, glowing with holiday lights. Inside, it was a crime scene. I let myself in quietly. The house smelled of stale popcorn and damp wool. I walked past the living room. Marlo was snoring. I went upstairs to my bedroom. I locked the door. I wedged a chair under the handle. I lay down on my bed, fully clothed. I stared at the ceiling. My father had looked me in the eye and told me I was ungrateful. He had told me I owed him, all while he was driving a truck bought with my credit, wearing clothes bought with my future. The guilt that had controlled me for 33 years evaporated. It didn't fizzle out. It burned up in a flash of white-hot clarity. He didn't love me. He consumed me, and he had brought 30 people here to watch him eat. I closed my eyes. I will think about it. I rehearsed in the dark. I wouldn't just think about it. I was going to burn it down. Not the house, the lie. I fell asleep to the sound of my own steady breathing, waiting for the sun to rise on the last day I would ever be his victim. The alarm on my phone vibrated against the nightstand at 4 a.m. I didn't need it. I had been staring at the ceiling since 2, listening to the house settle under the weight of 30 intruders. Downstairs, the air mattresses had finally stopped squeaking. The heavy rhythmic snoring of Uncle Dale vibrated through the floorboards like a distant generator. The house felt less like a home and more like a pressurized vessel waiting for a spark. Yesterday evening, just before everyone had collapsed into a food coma, my father had made an announcement. He had clinked a fork against his glass, beaming like a CEO at a shareholder meeting. "Tomorrow morning," he had said, looking directly at me, "we are going to have a family meeting. 10 o'clock sharp. We need to clear the air and make some decisions about the future. Everyone attends. No excuses." I knew what that meant. It wasn't a meeting. It was a sentencing hearing. He intended to sit me down in the center of the living room, surrounded by the people who had changed my diapers and attended my graduation, and he was going to badger me until I signed the papers for the business loan. He was going to weaponize their need against my boundaries. He was going to make me choose between being the savior or the villain, but he had made a tactical error. He assumed I would be there. I slid out of bed, the floorboards cold against my bare feet. I moved with the silence of a ghost in my own house. I didn't turn on a lamp. I dressed in the dark. Jeans, a heavy wool sweater, thick socks. I packed a single duffel bag, my laptop, my chargers, my toiletries, and the folder of documents I had printed at Tessa's house the night before. The credit report that proved my father was not just a pushy parent, but a criminal. I crept out into the hallway. The door to the guest room was open, and I could see the silhouette of Aunt Sarah asleep, her mouth open. I held my breath as I passed the stairs. Every creak felt like a gunshot. In the kitchen, the remnants of the night before lay scattered like debris. Dirty plates stacked in the sink, a half-empty carton of eggnog on the counter. My father's leather satchel sat on the breakfast bar, looking innocent and heavy. I resisted the urge to open it again. I had seen enough. I took a notepad from the magnetic strip on the fridge. My hand hovered over the paper. Part of me wanted to write a manifesto. I wanted to scream in ink about the betrayal, the loans, the truck, the lies. But Marin Holt's advice rang in my head. Do not confront. Do not explain. Just remove yourself. I wrote 2 sentences. I will not be home today. Please respect my space. I left the note on the coffee pot, where my father would inevitably go first thing in the morning. I slipped out the back door, locking it behind me with the key I kept on my ring. The morning air was biting, sharp with the scent of pine and coming snow. My car was parked on the street, boxed in by the van and Uncle Dale's truck. But I had foreseen this. I had parked my small SUV at the very edge of the curb, just enough room to maneuver out if I was careful. I climbed in, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't start the engine immediately. I sat there, gripping the wheel, looking at the dark windows of my house. I felt a wave of nausea. I was running away. I was 33 years old, a senior compliance officer, a woman who stared down federal regulators, and I was sneaking out of my own house before dawn to avoid my father. No, I whispered to the empty car. I am not running away. I am taking the high ground. I turned the key. The engine purred to life. I kept the headlights off until I was halfway down the block. As I turned onto the main road leading out of Holleridge, I pulled over for one final task. I opened my phone settings. I tapped location sharing. I saw the list of people I shared with. Tessa, my sister Lila, and my father. I had shared it with him years ago, when I first moved out. A safety measure he had insisted on. So I know you are safe, Jenny. I tapped stop sharing. Then I went to my phone carrier settings and forwarded all calls to voicemail. I put the phone in the passenger seat. It felt like I had just cut an anchor line. I drove north. 2 hours later, the landscape had changed from the suburban sprawl of Massachusetts to the dense, pine-heavy silence of the New Hampshire border. I pulled into the gravel driveway of the Heron's Rest, a small cedar-shingled inn on the edge of a frozen lake in Eldon Cove. I had found it online at 3 a.m. It was off-season, quiet, and possessed Wi-Fi strong enough for me to work remotely if I needed to. The innkeeper, a woman with gray braids and a kind face, gave me a room on the second floor overlooking the water. "Checking in for a holiday retreat?" she asked, handing me a physical brass key. Something like that. I said. I hauled my bag up the stairs and locked the door behind me. The room was simple. A quilt-covered bed, a pine desk, a fireplace. It was silent, gloriously, beautifully silent. I sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty my lungs completely. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping guilt. "They are your family," the voice in my head whispered. "You abandoned them on Christmas week. Who does that?" "A victim," I answered myself. "A victim does that." I opened my laptop and connected to the inn's network. I didn't open my email. I opened the app for my home security system. It was 9:30 in the morning. The feed from the entryway camera loaded. It was a wide-angle shot of my front hall and the living room beyond. The house was awake. I watched, feeling like a voyeur, a ghost haunting my own life. My father was standing in the kitchen, holding the piece of paper I had left. He was wearing his robe, his hair messy. Aunt Sarah stood next to him, clutching her chest. He read the note. Then he read it again. He didn't look worried. He looked furious. He crumpled the note in his fist and threw it onto the counter. He turned to the room. I couldn't hear the audio perfectly. The camera was in the bookshelf and the microphone was small, but I turned the volume on my laptop all the way up. "Unbelievable," my father was saying, his voice tinny but distinct. "She is gone." "Gone?" Aunt Sarah shrieked. "What do you mean, gone?" "She ran," my father said, pacing the small kitchen, just like she always does. He walked into the living room, where the cousins and uncles were gathering, sensing the drama like sharks sensing blood in the water. "Listen up, everyone," my father announced. He clapped his hands for attention. "Genesis has decided to take a little personal day." A murmur went through the crowd. "She left a note," my father continued, his voice dropping to a confidential, pitying register. "You know how she gets. She gets overwhelmed. The pressure of the job, the stress. She is fragile. I have been telling you all. She looks successful, but she is barely holding it together." I stared at the screen, my mouth open. He was spinning it in real time. He wasn't the villain who drove me out. He was the concerned father of a mentally unstable daughter. "Is she coming back?" Cousin Brenda asked, looking up from her phone. "Who knows?" My father sighed. "She does this. When things get real, Genesis runs. She cannot handle the emotion of a real family. She prefers her spreadsheets. It is okay." "Harold," Aunt Marge soothed, patting his arm. "She is just a little broken. That one. You did your best." I felt a surge of rage so hot it made my eyes water. Broken? I was the only one paying my bills. I was the only one who didn't view family as a financial transaction. But the narrative was taking root. I could see it in their faces. They were nodding. They were accepting the story that Genesis was the problem. The flighty, cold, unstable one. Then, the mood shifted from concern to opportunism. "Well, if she is not here, Uncle Dale said, scratching his stomach. What about the loan? The bank needs that paperwork by Friday. My father looked at the ceiling, feigning reluctance. I will handle her, he said. I will get her on the phone. She just needs to be talked down. But in the meantime... He looked around the room. Did she leave the office unlocked? My stomach dropped. I watched as my father and Dale walked toward the hallway leading to my office. The camera angle didn't reach the office door, but I could hear them. The sound of a doorknob rattling, then rattling harder. Locked. Dale grunted. She probably has the papers in there, my father said. Another relative. Carmen Price, Marlowe's mother, walked into the frame. She was holding a cup of my coffee. If she is hiding, it is because she knows she should sign. Carmen said loudly, she knows she owes this to you. Harold, guilt is a powerful thing. She is probably driving around the block right now, crying, waiting for you to call and tell her it is okay. I sat back in the chair at the inn, staring at Carmen. They didn't care that I was gone. They didn't care if I was safe. They cared that the hand that held the pen was missing. My phone, which I had left on the bed, lit up. A text. It wasn't my father. It was Tessa. Text from Tessa. They are freaking out. Your dad is telling everyone you are having a mental breakdown. He is crying. It is an Oscar-worthy performance. I typed back. I am watching them on the cameras. They tried the office door. Tessa. I know. I saw Dale trying to shimmy the lock with a credit card. I yelled at him from my porch. I told him I would call the police if he broke the door down. He stopped. Thank you, I typed. Are they in my bedroom? Tessa. No, but Cousin Marlowe asked me if I knew where you kept your spare keys. I told him to go to hell. Tessa. Also, Brenda tried to check the master bedroom closet for extra blankets. I think she was looking for a safe. I closed my eyes. It was a violation so complete it felt physical. They were stripping the carcass before the animal was even dead. I looked back at the screen. My father was on his phone now, pacing the living room. He looked agitated. He was probably calling me. I checked my voicemail. 7 missed calls, all from Dad. I played the first one. Jenny, pick up. We are worried sick. You cannot just vanish. People are asking questions. You are embarrassing the family. Come home right now and we can fix this. The second one, Genesis. This is childish. We have business to discuss. Dale is waiting. Stop playing games. The third one, his voice lower, darker. You think you are clever? Walking out? You are just proving my point. You are unstable. Call me. I deleted the voicemails. I stood up and walked to the window. The lake was a sheet of white ice. I wasn't unstable. I was calculating. I looked at the time. 11 o'clock. I had an appointment. Marin Holt's office was in the next town over. A 40-minute drive from Eldon Cove. It was a sleek, glass-walled building that smelled of expensive coffee and leather bindings. Marin met me in the lobby. She was a tall woman with a razor-sharp bob and glasses that looked like they cost more than my first car. Genesis, she said, shaking my hand firmly. You look better than I expected for someone whose house is under siege. I feel like a fugitive. I admitted. Come back, she said. Let's look at the damage. We sat in her conference room. I laid out the printed credit report and the photos I had taken of the courier notice. Marin put on her glasses and leaned over the papers. She was silent for a long time. The only sound was the scratching of her pen as she made notes. Okay, she said finally. Looking up. This is textbook. She pointed to the entry for North Star Lending. You said you never signed this? Never. I said, I didn't even know who they were until Sunday. Marin turned her laptop monitor toward me. I pulled the original loan application from their portal this morning. She said, I have a contact in their compliance department. Look at the signature. I looked. It was a digital signature. Genesis A. Read. It looks like my signature, I said, squinting. It is a trace, Marin said. Someone took a real signature of yours. Maybe from a birthday card, a check, an old tax return, scanned it, and pasted it into the electronic signature box. It is clumsy, but it passes the automated checks. And the IP address? I asked. Marin nodded. The The application was submitted from an IP address in Oak Creek. That is where your father lives, isn't it? Yes, so we have him. Marin said, we can prove he, or someone using his internet connection, submitted a fraudulent application using your identity. This is a Class C felony. Genesis, identity theft, wire fraud. I stared at the screen, seeing it in black and white. The timestamp, the IP address, made the betrayal final. There was no misunderstanding. He hadn't borrowed my name. He had stolen it. What about the truck? I asked. Co-signed. Marin said, same method. He likely used your information to boost his credit score to get a lower rate. If he defaults, they come after you. So what do I do? I asked. Do I call the police? Marin leaned back. You could, she said. We could file a police report right now. They would go to your house, arrest him in front of the 30 relatives, and you would be the daughter who sent her father to jail on Christmas. I flinched. I wasn't ready for that. I wanted justice, but I didn't want the nuclear fallout of a public arrest. Not yet. I don't want him arrested, I said softly. I just want him out. I want my name off the loans. I want him to admit it. Then we apply pressure. Marin said, we draft a frantic affidavit of forgery. We send it to the lenders. They will freeze the accounts and open a fraud investigation. That will scare him. But to get him out of your house... She tapped her pen on the table. You need to confront him without being in the room. You need to take away his narrative. Right now, he controls the story. He is saying you are crazy. You need to show the family that you are the only sane person left. How? You communicate in writing, she said. Create a paper trail, and you issue a command. She slid a notepad toward me. Text him. Tell him you know. But keep it vague. Let him wonder how much you know. Paranoia is your friend right now. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady. I typed out the message Marin suggested. Do not sign or open anything using my name again. I hit send. I watched the screen. Waiting. The response came 10 seconds later. Dad. Stop being dramatic. We are trying to help you. Come home. He was dismissing me. He thought I was throwing a tantrum. He didn't know I was sitting in a lawyer's office with his IP address on a screen. Marin read the text and smiled. A cold, shark-like smile. He thinks he is safe, she said. Good. Let him think that. Now, she said. We set the stage for the eviction. You cannot go back there alone, and you cannot do it while they are entrenched in your living room. You need to get them onto neutral ground. A dinner? I suggested. Exactly, Marin said. A replacement Christmas dinner. Somewhere public. Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere he cannot yell. I nodded. I knew the place. The Winter Table. It was an upscale restaurant in town that had private rooms. It was expensive, quiet, and intimidatingly formal. My father hated places like that. He felt small in them. I will book the Juniper Hall room. I said, it holds 30. Good, Marin said. Invite them. Frame it as a peace offering. Say you want to clear the air. And you? I asked. I will be there, she said. I will come in for dessert. I took a deep breath. I opened the group chat that my father had created days ago. Read Family Christmas. I typed, I am sorry for leaving abruptly. I needed to think. I want us to have a proper Christmas dinner. But the house is too chaotic for me right now. I have booked the Juniper room at the Winter Table for tomorrow night at 6. Dinner is on me. Please meet me there so we can talk. I hit send. Then I added one more rule. No financial discussions until after we eat. I want peace. I waited. The replies started popping up. Aunt Marge. Oh, thank goodness. We were so worried. Cousin Brenda. Is that the place with the expensive steak? I'm in. Uncle Dale. As long as we talk business eventually. And finally, my father. Dad. I am glad you came to your senses. Jenny, we will see you there. We just want what is best for you. I lowered the phone. He took the bait. He thought he had won. He thought I had retreated to a hotel to pout, and was now returning to buy them a $5,000 dinner as an apology. He thought he was walking into a victory lap. I looked at Marin. He said yes. I said, Marin closed the file folder with a sharp snap. "Excellent," she said. "Enjoy your night at the lake. Genesis, get some sleep. You are going to need your strength for the performance." I drove back to the inn as the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple over the tree line. I stopped at a gas station and bought a sandwich and a bottle of water. I ate it in my room, watching the security feed again. The mood in the house had changed. The tension had broken. They were celebrating. My father was in the living room, holding a glass of wine. He was laughing, retelling a story to a captive audience of cousins. He looked relaxed. He looked like the king of the castle. She just needed a cooling-off period. I heard him say, his voice booming. "She knows who wears the pants in this family. She knows she needs us." I watched him. I watched the way he leaned back in my armchair, the way he put his feet up on my coffee table without a coaster. He was so confident. He had 30 relatives convinced that I was the problem and he was the solution. He had my signature on a loan application. He had my house filled with his people. But as I watched, I didn't feel the old fear. I didn't feel the urge to apologize. I reached into my bag and pulled out the file Marin had given me. Inside was the affidavit of forgery, ready for my signature. Inside was the cease and desist letter. Inside was the timeline of every lie he had told in the last 6 months. I looked at the screen one last time. "Enjoy the wine." "Dad," I whispered to the pixelated image, "it is the last thing I'm ever going to give you." I closed the laptop. I turned off the light. For the first time in a week, I slept without dreaming. I slept the deep, heavy sleep of a soldier the night before the battle, knowing that win or lose, the waiting was finally over. The Wednesday before Christmas rose over Eldon Cove with a gray, oppressive light. From the window of my room at the inn, the lake looked like a slab of hammered lead. I had slept, but it wasn't a restful sleep. It was the kind of unconsciousness you fall into when your brain simply refuses to process any more data. I sat up, drank a glass of lukewarm water from the tap, and opened my laptop. It was time to check on the hostages, or rather, the occupiers. I logged into the security feed. The timestamp read 8:30 in the morning. My house in Holleridge was waking up, and even through the silent, grainy video feed, I could see the tension vibrating in the air. The unified front my father had tried to present yesterday was cracking. Without me there to serve as the common enemy or the servant, the group had nothing to absorb their energy. They were stranded in a house that wasn't theirs, with a host who had vanished, and the novelty of the family reunion was wearing off. I watched the living room camera. The factions were clear. On the sofa, huddled under blankets, were the Leavers. Aunt Marge and 2 of the older cousins were whispering, their phones out. I could guess what they were doing. Checking weather reports, looking up bus schedules, maybe texting people back home. They looked uncomfortable. They hadn't signed up for a siege. They had signed up for free food and a holiday. Now that the food was running low and the holiday felt like a stakeout, they wanted out. Standing near the kitchen island were the Punishers. This group included Uncle Dale, Cousin Marlowe, and Aunt Sarah. They were animated, their gestures sharp and angry. I zoomed in on the feed, turning up the audio. "Disrespectful," Sarah was saying, slamming a coffee mug down on my granite countertop. "We drive all this way, and she pulls a disappearing act? It is a slap in the face. She is spoiled," Dale grumbled, digging through my fridge. "Look at this. Organic kale. Almond milk. She thinks she is better than us. She needs to be taken down a peg. We should stay just to teach her a lesson. We are not leaving until she comes back and apologizes." And then there was Harold. My father was the conductor. He moved between the groups, smoothing feathers, managing the spin. Now, Sarah," I heard him say, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Don't be hard on her. Genesis is fragile. She is having a moment. She will be back. I texted her, and she is already softening. She just needs to know we are still here for her. If we leave now, we prove her right. We have to stay. We have to show her that family doesn't walk away." I sat back in my chair at the inn, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. He was brilliant. He was reframing their intrusion as an act of loyalty. We have to stay to prove we love her. It was a logic loop so tight it was suffocating. If they left, they didn't care. If they stayed, they were crushing me. He had rigged the game so that the only winning move for them was to continue the occupation. I watched as the morning unfolded. It was a study in slow-motion destruction. Around 10 o'clock, a loud crash from the kitchen made me jump. I switched the camera view. Cousin Marlowe had been looking for something in the upper cabinets, probably liquor, though it was barely mid-morning. He had pulled too hard on the cabinet door, swinging it past its hinge limit. The wood splintered. The door hung askew. The screws ripped out of the particle board frame. "Oops," Marlowe said, laughing nervously. "Cheap crap." Aunt Sarah gasped. "Oh, Lord, she is going to kill us." My father walked into the frame. He looked at the broken door. He looked at the splintered wood on the floor. He didn't get angry. He didn't offer to fix it. "Relax," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. It is just a cabinet. But Harold, it is her house." Sarah fretted. "It will be hers to fix anyway," my father said, turning his back on the damage to pour himself more coffee. "She has plenty of money. She can hire a handyman. Consider it her contribution to the party since she isn't here to cook." I froze. It will be hers to fix anyway. The entitlement in his voice was absolute. He didn't see my home as a possession I had worked for. He saw it as a resource he had rights to, and any damage he caused was simply an operating cost that I was expected to absorb. I wasn't the owner in his eyes. I was the superintendent, the janitor. I took a screenshot of the broken cabinet. I took a screenshot of Marlowe laughing. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to text them. I wanted to scream through the digital void, "Get out of my house," but I didn't. I saved the images to a folder labeled Evidence. Every insult, every broken hinge, every lie was fuel. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't wondering if I was being too sensitive. I was watching them dismantle my life in real time, and the clarity was agonizing. But it was also steadying. I wasn't the crazy one. I was just the one with the receipts. At 1 p.m, my phone buzzed. "Tessa, red flag, big red flag, do not panic, but look at the front porch." I switched the camera view to the doorbell feed. My heart hammered against my ribs. Standing on my porch, shivering slightly in the cold wind, was Greg, the realtor from Lark & Co. He wasn't alone. My father was with him. They weren't inside, probably because the house was too loud for a serious conversation, but they were huddled close together near the railing. I turned up the volume. The wind noise was bad, rushing over the microphone, but I could catch snippets. "Market is shifting." "Harold," Greg was saying, tapping a folder against his leg. "If we want to move on this, we need to get the appraisal done this week. Rates are ticking up." I know, my father said, looking over his shoulder at the front door as if checking for spies. "She is being difficult. She took off." Greg frowned. "Took off? Does that mean the deal is dead?" "No." My father said quickly, "Absolutely not. She is just processing. I am working on her. She knows she needs to refinance. She is swimming in debt. Greg, she puts on a good show, but she is underwater. I'm trying to bail her out." I gasped. Swimming in debt? I had an 800 credit score. I paid my credit card off in full every month. The only debt I had was the mortgage and the student loans I was aggressively paying down. He was projecting his own financial ruin onto me to justify stealing my equity. "So what is the timeline?" Greg asked. "I will get her to sign by Friday." My father said, "I just need the papers ready. Can you leave the packet with me?" Greg hesitated. "Technically, I need her signature to initiate the full appraisal, or a power of attorney. We are family." "Greg," my father said, dropping his voice to that persuasive, salesman purr, "I am handling her affairs. She trusts me. Just leave the packet. I will get it done." Greg sighed, then handed the folder to my father. "All right, but keep this between us until it is signed. I could lose my license for prepping a refi without the owner present." I watched my father take the folder. He tucked it under his arm like a newspaper. "You are a lifesaver. Greg, we will get this sorted." I watched them shake hands. Greg walked back to his car. My father stood on the porch for a moment, looking at the folder with a hungry, satisfied expression. I felt sick, physically sick. He wasn't just trying to get a loan for the business. He was trying to refinance my entire house. He was trying to strip the equity I had built over 5 years and funnel it into his own black hole of debt. I grabbed my phone and dialed Marin Holt. She answered on the first ring. "Marin, he is talking to a realtor," I said, my voice shaking. "I just watched it on the camera. He took a packet. He is telling the realtor I am in debt and that he is handling my affairs. He promised to get a signature by Friday." Marin's voice came through the line, sharp and cold. "Did he sign anything right there on the porch?" "No, he took the papers." "Okay," Marin said. "He is escalating. He knows he is running out of time. He is going to try to forge your signature on those refinance documents tonight or tomorrow. What do I do? Do I call the realtor?" "No," Marin said. "If you call the realtor, he tips off your father. Your father will deny it, hide the papers, and claim he was just getting information. We need him to commit. We need him to bring those papers to the dinner." "The dinner," I repeated. "Yes," Marin said. "If he brings those papers to the dinner and tries to get you to sign, or admits to having them, we have him for attempted mortgage fraud. But we need to secure your flank. You need to make sure he cannot act as you in the meantime." "How do I do that?" "You need to lock down your mortgage lender," Marin instructed. "Call them immediately. Tell them there is an active identity theft risk. Place a verbal password on the account, and find out if he has already tried to contact them." I hung up and dialed the number on the back of my mortgage statement, which I had saved in my password manager. The hold music was a jaunty jazz loop that felt mocking in its cheerfulness. I paced the small room at the inn, my hands sweating. Finally, a representative answered. "Northmere Bank. This is Jason. How can I help you?" "I need to speak to the fraud department." I said, "My name is Genesis Reed. There was a series of transfers." Finally, a woman named Patricia came on the line. "I need to verify some activity on my mortgage," I said, "and I need to know if anyone other than me has authorization to access the account." We went through the security questions. Mother's maiden name, last payment amount, social security number. "Ms. Reed," Patricia said, her typing clicking in the background. "I see here that you have one authorized contact listed on the account. A Harold Reed?" My blood turned to ice. "I never authorized him." I said, "When was he added?" "Let me check the history." Patricia said, "It looks like September 12th of this year. A form was submitted uploading him as a third-party désigné. It allows him to receive statements and discuss balance inquiries, though not to initiate a full refinance without further signature. I didn't submit that form." I whispered, "There is a signature on file." Patricia said, "It was uploaded through the document portal. Can you send it to me?" I asked. "Right now?" "I can email it to the address on file." "Do it." A moment later, the email pinged on my laptop. I opened the PDF. It was a standard third-party authorization form, and there, at the bottom, was my signature. But it wasn't just a standard form. I looked closer at the document. It looked familiar. The font, the layout. I opened my cloud storage drive. I went to the folder labeled House Purchase, 2022. I pulled up my original closing disclosure. I compared the two. The authorization form wasn't a new document. It was a page from my original closing packet, an addendum I had signed 3 years ago that was originally blank, meant for designating a lawyer or a spouse. I zoomed in. The checkbox next to authorized party had been ticked in fresh ink. My father's name had been written in the blank space in a handwriting that tried to look generic, but had the distinct slant of my father's R's. He had stolen a page from my files. When he visited in September, for my birthday, I remembered with a jolt. He must have gone into my office. He must have found the physical file of my closing documents. He took the page that I had signed but left blank. A foolish oversight on my part, or maybe a standard practice I hadn't questioned at the time, and he filled in his own name. Then he scanned it and uploaded it. He had been planning this for months, since September, since before he bought the truck. He hadn't just crashed my Christmas. He had been slowly, methodically embedding himself into my financial life like a parasite, waiting for the moment to feed. I looked at the screen, tears pricking my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of sheer, horrified awe. I realized then that my father didn't see me as a person. He saw me as a sleeper cell of equity that he could activate whenever he needed cash. I called Patricia back. "Freeze it," I said. "Remove him. Put a code on the account. If he calls, tell him nothing." "Done," Patricia said. Hearing the steel in my voice, I hung up. I felt hollowed out. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the blue gloom, watching the security feed. The house was quieter now. They were getting ready for dinner, my dinner. The dinner I was paying for to lure them out of my fortress. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was a number I didn't recognize. Area code 617. Boston. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "This is Genesis." There was a pause, then a voice, smoky and tired, spoke. "Hey, Jenny?" It was a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. "Lila?" I asked. "My half-sister. She was 5 years older than me, the daughter of my father's first marriage. We had never been close. Harold had always pitted us against each other. Lila was the rebel, the screw-up, and I was the golden child. Lila had stopped coming to family events years ago. I heard you ran," Lila said. "News travels fast," I said, guarding my tone. "Aunt Marge called me." Lila said, "She wanted to know if you were crashing on my couch. She said you had a mental breakdown and abandoned the family on Christmas. Is that what she said?" "Yeah. She also said Harold is being a saint about it." Lila laughed, a harsh barking sound. "That is why I'm calling, Jenny, because if Harold is playing the saint, it means he is about to bleed you dry." I gripped the phone tighter. "What do you know?" "Lila, I know he's in the hole," she said, deep. "He owes money to some bad people. Jenny, not just banks, private lenders, the kind who don't send letters. How do you know that?" "Because he came to me first," she said. The silence on the line was heavy. 6 months ago," Lila continued, "he showed up at my apartment, gave me the whole proud dad speech, said he wanted to help me with my student loans, asked for my info to set up a trust." "And?" I asked. "And 3 weeks later, I got a notification that someone tried to open 5 credit cards in my name." My breath hitched. I caught it. Lila said, "I have credit monitoring like a hawk because of my ex. I shut it down. I called him and told him if he ever came near me again, I would put him in the hospital." "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Would you have believed me?" Lila asked. "Back then, you were still the golden girl. Jenny, you still thought he was just a lovable goofball who was bad with money. You needed to see it for yourself." I closed my eyes. She was right. 6 months ago, I would have defended him. I would have said there was a misunderstanding. He did it to me. I said, he opened a line of credit. He co-signed a truck. He is trying to refinance my house. Lila let out a low whistle. "The house, that is the big score. He has been eyeing that equity since you signed the deed." "Why?" I asked. The question bursting out of me. "Why does he do this? He is our father." Lila sighed. It sounded like the sound of old, dry leaves scraping together. "He doesn't know how to be a father, Jenny. He only knows how to be a front man. He needs the lifestyle to feel like he matters, and he feels entitled to our lives because he thinks he made us. In his head, your money is his money because you are his product. He is ruining me." I said, "He will ruin you and call it love." Lila said, "He will tell everyone he did it to save the family business. He will cry. He will make you look like the villain for saying no. That is why he brought the crowd." "The crowd." I repeated, "He likes crowds." Lila said, "Crowds are his armor. If he gets you one-on-one, he is weak. But if he has an audience, he can perform. He can shame you into compliance. He creates a version of reality where he is the hero, and if enough people nod along, it becomes true." I looked at the screen. at the 30 people occupying my home, nodding along to his reality. I am done. Lila, I said, I am ending it tonight. Good, Lila said, but be careful. When you pop the bubble, he is going to get ugly. He is a narcissist. Jenny, when they lose control, they try to destroy the thing they can't control. I am not afraid of him anymore, I said, and I realized it was true. Give him hell, Lila said. And Jenny? Yeah? When you kick him out, change your locks. I already did, I said. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. The conversation with Lila had been the final piece of the puzzle. It wasn't just greed, it was pathology. My father was a man who consumed his children to feed his own ego. He had tried to eat Lila, and she had bitten him back. Now he was trying to eat me. I looked at the time. 5 o'clock. The dinner was at 6. I stood up. I went to the small bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. My eyes were dark circles. My hair was pulled back in a severe bun, but I didn't look fragile. I looked like a woman who was done negotiating. I went back to the main room and dressed. I put on a black turtleneck and tailored trousers. I put on my coat. I picked up the folder Marin had prepared. I added the printout of the authorized contact form. I added the screenshots of the broken cabinet and the texts. I had a surprise for the family. They thought they were coming to a peace treaty. They thought I was going to apologize, pay for their steaks, and maybe, just maybe, sign the papers to save the family. They were wrong. My surprise wasn't revenge. Revenge is emotional. Revenge is messy. My surprise was a boundary, a wall so high and so thick that no amount of guilt, no amount of proud dad speeches, and no amount of flying monkeys could ever breach it again. I wasn't going to argue with him. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to present the evidence, and then I was going to vanish from his life, leaving him with nothing but the truth he had spent 60 years running from. I grabbed my keys. I walked out of the inn and into the cold night air. The snow was starting to fall again, dusting the world in white. It was a perfect night for a reckoning. The winter table was the kind of restaurant that sold silence as a luxury. The floors were thick, reclaimed pine that absorbed footsteps. The lighting was low and amber, casting long shadows against the exposed brick walls, and the air smelled of wood smoke and expensive red wine. I arrived 30 minutes early. I stood in the center of Juniper Hall, the private room I had reserved. It was a beautiful space, separated from the main dining floor by heavy velvet curtains. A long mahogany table was set for 32 people. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier. It looked like the setting for a celebration. It felt like an execution chamber. I checked the place settings one last time. I had placed a small, printed card on each plate. The text was simple, elegant, and non-negotiable. Welcome. Tonight is for family connection only. Please, no financial discussions, business proposals, or documents. Let us enjoy the holiday in peace. Marin Holt stood by the fireplace, warming her hands. She was dressed in a soft gray sweater that made her look less like a shark and more like a civilian, which was exactly the point. Are you ready? She asked, watching me adjust a fork by a millimeter. No, I said honestly. My hands were trembling. I hid them in the pockets of my trousers. I feel like I'm walking into a lion's den wearing a steak vest. You are not the steak. Genesis, Marin said, her voice calm and anchoring. You are the zookeeper. You have the keys. Remember that. The velvet curtain rustled. A woman stepped in. She had dark hair cut short and sharp, a leather jacket that had seen better days, and eyes that mirrored my own. Lila. I hadn't seen my half-sister in person in 3 years. She looked tired, but she stood with a coiled energy that I recognized. It was the stance of someone who had learned to fight back. I didn't think you would come, I said. Lila looked at the table, then at me. She didn't smile, but her expression softened. I heard there was going to be a show, she said, and free food. I never turned down either. She walked over and hugged me. It was a stiff, brief hug. We weren't a hugging family, but the grip of her hand on my arm was fierce. "He is going to hate this," she whispered. "Being handled. He hates being handled." "I know." I said, "That is the point." We heard the noise before we saw them, the muffled sound of 30 people moving through a quiet restaurant, the scraping of chairs in the lobby, the booming laugh of my father. "Showtime," Marin murmured. Stepping back into the shadows near the service entrance, the curtains were swept aside. Harold Reed entered first. He was wearing a suit I had never seen before. Charcoal gray, tailored, expensive. It looked suspiciously like something he might have charged to a card I didn't know about. He stopped when he saw me. He threw his arms wide, his face arranging itself into a mask of overwhelming relief and benevolence. "Genesis!" he cried, rushing forward. The room filled up behind him. Uncle Dale, Aunt Sarah, Aunt Marge, the cousins. They looked around the room with wide eyes, taking in the crystal, the fire, the waiter standing ready with a bottle of wine. My father reached me and pulled me into a hug. I stood rigid. "I'm so glad you came to your senses, honey," he whispered in my ear, loud enough for the front row to hear. "We were so worried, but look at this place. You really went all out to make it up to us." He pulled back, keeping his hands on my shoulders, turning me to face the family. "Look at her," he announced. "She had a little wobble, but she is back. That is the Reed spirit. We forgive you. Jenny, we are just glad you are safe." A murmur of agreement went through the room. "We forgive you." The audacity of it nearly knocked the wind out of me. He was granting me absolution for the crime of escaping his abuse. "Please, sit down," I said, my voice steady despite the hammering in my chest. They shuffled into seats. The noise level rose. Compliments on the decor. Jokes about who was sitting next to whom. It felt terrifyingly normal. For a moment, I doubted myself. Maybe I was the crazy one. Maybe this was just a family dinner. Then I saw Uncle Dale. He sat 3 seats down from my father. He placed a thick manila folder on the table next to his bread plate. My stomach hardened. I walked to the head of the table, but I didn't sit. I waited. The chatter died down. 30 faces looked up at me. Some were smiling, expecting a toast. Others, like Cousin Marlowe, looked bored. My father looked triumphant. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said. My voice was not loud, but in the acoustic perfection of the room, it carried to the back corners. "I know the last 24 hours have been confusing." I continued, "And I know there are a lot of stories floating around about why I left. I am not here to argue about those stories. I am here because I love this family." My father nodded vigorously, raising his glass. Here, but," I said, cutting through his interruption. "I need to be clear about something. This dinner is a boundary." I gestured to the card on my father's plate. He hadn't read it. He picked it up now, squinting. "I will not be pressured." I said, "I will not be used, and I will not be lied about. Tonight is for dinner. It is for catching up. It is not for business." I looked directly at Uncle Dale. "If anyone brings up money, loans, the house, or signatures, I will leave, and I will not come back." The room went silent. The air grew thin. My father chuckled. It was a nervous sound. "Genesis, honey," he said, "you are being a little intense. We are just family. No need for threats." "It is not a threat." "Dad," I said, "it is a promise." I sat down. For the first 10 minutes, it seemed to work. The waiters brought out appetizers, wild mushroom tartlets, shrimp cocktail. The conversation was stilted, but civil. People talked about the weather, the Patriots, the snow, but I could feel the pressure building. My father was vibrating with it. He kept glancing at Dale. He kept glancing at the folder. He was a man who had a deadline, and a nice dinner was just an obstacle to his goal. The appetizers were cleared. The main course was delayed. Uncle Dale couldn't take it anymore. He cleared his throat. It sounded like a chainsaw in the quiet room. "Look, Jenny," he said, leaning forward. "I know you said no business, and I respect that. I really do." "Don't," I whispered, gripping my napkin under the table. "But," Dale continued, picking up the folder, "since we are all here, And the notary is actually just down the street. He gestured vaguely. It seems silly to waste the trip. It is just a formality. Really. Your dad explained the situation. We just need a quick signature on the cosign agreement, and then we can enjoy the steak. He slid the folder across the mahogany table toward me. It knocked over a salt shaker. Harold beamed. Just a quick scribbles. Honey, then we are done. No more stress. Just help your uncle out, and we can celebrate. The blatant disrespect was breathtaking. I had given them one rule. One simple, clear boundary, and they had trampled it before the entrees even arrived. My hands started to shake. I felt the heat rising in my neck. The old Genesis would have folded. The old Genesis would have signed just to stop the scene, to stop everyone from looking at her. But I wasn't the old Genesis. I was the woman who had watched them break my cabinet and laugh about it. I didn't reach for Dale's folder. I reached into my tote bag, which sat by my feet. I pulled out my own folder. It was black, sleek, and terrifyingly thick. I stood up. I didn't say a word. I slid the black folder across the table until it hit Dale's manila one. The sound of the impact, thwack, echoed in the room. "What is this?" Dale asked, frowning. "Open it," I said. Dale looked at my father. My father looked confused. "Go ahead," I said. Read it out loud." Dale flipped the cover open. He stared at the first page. "It is a credit report." He stammered. "Keep reading," I said. He turned the page. North Star Lending. He read, $12,000. He looked up. "I didn't know you had a loan." "Jenny, I don't," I said. "My father does. In my name." A gasp went through the room. Aunt Marge put her hand to her mouth. "That is not true," my father shouted. Standing up so fast his chair tipped over. "That is a mistake, a clerical error. Sit down." "Harold," I said. My voice was ice. I looked at the rest of the table. Turn the page. Dale turned the page. "This is a courier notice," he said, "addressed to Harold Reed, at 42 Briar Lane, my house." I said to the room, he had delinquency notices sent to my house so he could hide them. I picked up a stack of papers from my side of the table. "And these," I said, holding them up, "are screenshots." I looked at Cousin Marlowe. "Here is you breaking my cabinet and calling my house cheap crap." I looked at Aunt Sarah. "Here is you saying I need to be taken down a peg." I looked at my father. "And here is the authorization form for my mortgage. The one where you forged my signature to make yourself an authorized contact so you could try to refinance my home behind my back." I dropped the papers onto the table. They fanned out, a damning mosaic of betrayal. The room was so quiet, I could hear the fire crackling in the hearth. It was a silence that felt heavy, a silence that stripped away the pretense of the happy family. My father's face had gone from red to a pale, mottled gray. "You are confused," he said, his voice trembling. "Jenny, you are sick. You are imagining things. I was trying to help you manage your accounts. You gave me permission. Don't you remember? You forget things when you are stressed. He was doing it. He was gaslighting me in front of 30 people. He was rewriting reality in real time." "No." The voice came from the side of the room. Lila stepped forward. She had been sitting quietly, unnoticed, but now she was a force of nature. She walked to the table and picked up the credit report. "He is not confused," Lila said, looking at our father, "and neither is she." "Lila," my father barked, "stay out of this. You are bitter." "I am accurate," Lila shot back. "He did the exact same thing to me. Dad, remember? The trust fund? The 5 credit cards?" She turned to the family. "He stole her identity," she said flatly. "Just like he tried to steal mine. He isn't protecting the family legacy. He is funding his lifestyle with his children's credit scores. The dam broke." Aunt Marge stood up, her face trembling. "Harold?" she asked, her voice high and thin. "Is this true? Did you sign her name?" "It was for the business," my father shouted, throwing his hands up. "For us. I had to. The banks wouldn't listen. I was going to pay it back. I always pay it back. You never pay it back," Uncle Dale yelled, slamming his hand on the table. You told me she agreed. You told me she was a silent partner. I realized then that Dale didn't know. He was a leech. Yes, and entitled. But he hadn't known it was fraud. He thought I was just a reluctant donor. You lied to me. Harold, Dale said, his face purple. You made me an accomplice. I did it for you, my father screamed. To save your store. The room fractured. Half the table was looking at my father with horror. They were the ones who realized that if he could do this to me, he could do it to them. But the other half, the ones who relied on his handouts, the ones who believed in the tribe above the individual, turned on me. Why are you doing this? Aunt Sarah hissed. Standing up to defend her brother, why are you humiliating him? So what if he signed a paper? He is your father. You have plenty of money. You are rich. You wouldn't even miss it. You are destroying this family over money. It is not about the money. I said, it is about the crime. Oh, stop using legal words, Sarah spat. We are family. There is no crime in family. Actually, there is. Marin Holt stepped out of the shadows. She walked to the table with the casual confidence of someone who owned the room. She placed a business card on the table in front of my father. My name is Marin Holt, she said. I am an attorney specializing in financial fraud. The room went deadly silent again. Even Sarah shut her mouth. What has been described here? Marin said, her voice conversational but carrying a weight of steel, is identity theft, wire fraud, and forgery. These are felonies. In the state of Massachusetts, they carry prison sentences of up to 5 years per count. She looked at my father. We have the IP addresses. Mr. Reed. We have the digital traces. We have the affidavit from the bank. This isn't a family dispute. It is a criminal case waiting to be filed. My father looked at the card. He looked at Marin. He looked at me. You brought a lawyer? He whispered. To Christmas dinner? I brought a witness. I corrected. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. The off-ramp. I am not pressing charges, I said. My father's shoulders sagged. A flicker of hope returned to his eyes. Yet, I added, I looked at him. I will give you one option. Dad, one. I laid a single sheet of paper on the table. You will sign this agreement. It states that you admit to the unauthorized use of my identity. It states that you will remove yourself immediately from all accounts. And it states that you will publicly correct the lies you told about my mental health to everyone in this room and on social media. And in exchange? He asked, his voice sullen. In exchange, I said, I will pay for 1 session of financial counseling for you, and I will not send the police to your house tomorrow. I paused. But I will not co-sign the loan. I will not refinance my house, and I will not give you a single dollar of cash, ever again. My father stared at the paper. He looked around the room. He saw the judgment in Lila's eyes. He saw the confusion in Dale's. He saw the pity in Marge's. His narrative was dead. The proud dad mask had been ripped off, revealing the desperate, thieving con man beneath. He could have taken the deal. He could have saved himself. But narcissism is a terminal condition. It protects the ego at the cost of survival. He stood up straight. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at me with a hatred so pure it felt like a physical blow. You are a cruel girl. Genesis, he said, I am offering you mercy. I said, mercy? He sneered. You are humiliating me. You brought me here, to this fancy restaurant, in front of my family, to make me beg. You think you are better than us because you have a lawyer and a 401k? You are nothing without me. I made you. He ripped the paper in half. I don't need your charity. He spat, throwing the pieces on the floor. And I don't need your permission. I am the father. You are the child. You don't dictate terms to me. He looked at the family. We are leaving. He commanded. No one moved. I said we are leaving, he shouted. Uncle Dale looked at his steak, which had just arrived. He looked at my father. I am staying, Dale said quietly. I want to hear what the lawyer has to say. My father reeled back as if slapped. Fine, he snarled. Stay with the traitor. See what you get. He turned and stormed out of the room. The heavy velvet curtains swung shut behind him. I stood there, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. I looked at the torn paper on the floor. I felt a profound, crushing sadness, not because I had lost him a long time ago, but because he had chosen the lie over me. He had chosen his pride over his daughter. I looked at the room. The relatives were staring at their plates, at me, at the door. The energy was gone. The reunion was over. Marin walked over to me. "You did good," she whispered. I nodded. I turned to the table. The waiter was hovering nervously in the corner. "Please enjoy the dinner," I said to the family. "It is paid for." I picked up my bag. "Where are you going?" Aunt Marge asked, her voice trembling. "Home," I said. "My real home." I looked at Lila. "Are you coming?" I asked. Lila stood up. She grabbed a bread roll off the table. "Hell yes," she said. I walked out of Juniper Hall. I didn't look back at the crystal, or the fire, or the family that was slowly, painfully waking up from a lifetime of sleepwalking. I walked out into the cold, clean air of the parking lot. The surprise was complete. I hadn't just revealed the fraud, I had revealed the man, and in doing so, I had finally, irrevocably, set myself free. I drove back to the inn, Lila's car following mine. We sat in my room, drinking cheap wine from plastic cups. We watched the security feed on my laptop. The dinner had dissolved quickly after I left. The feed showed the cars returning to my driveway in Holleridge, but the energy was different. There was no boisterous shouting, no slamming doors. People were moving quietly, packing bags. "He lost the room," Lila said, watching the screen. "He lost the war." I said, "I watched my father's car pull in last. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time. The interior light was on. I could see him hitting the steering wheel. Once, twice, he was furious. He was cornered, and that meant he was dangerous." I picked up my phone. I had one more message to send, not to him, to the locksmith, because tomorrow, the house would be empty, and when I walked back in, it would be on my terms. I looked at Lila. "Thank you," I said, for standing up. She clinked her plastic cup against mine. "Us bad daughters have to stick together," she said. I smiled. For the first time in a week. It was a real smile. I wasn't a bad daughter. I was a person, and for the first time in 33 years, that was enough. But as I watched my father finally get out of his car and stalk toward the front door of my house, I knew the ending wasn't written yet. He wouldn't go quietly. He would try one last thing. He would try to burn the house down, metaphorically, or maybe, knowing him, literally. I closed the laptop. Let him try. I thought, I have the fire extinguisher, and I have the hose. Christmas Eve was tomorrow, and I had a feeling it was going to be a silent night, one way or another. The tires of my SUV crunched over the fresh layer of snow in the driveway. It was 10 in the morning on Christmas Eve. The sky was a brilliant, blinding white, the kind of day that usually signaled sledding and hot chocolate. Today, it signaled an eviction. Marin Holt sat in the passenger seat. She was reviewing a document on her lap, a yellow highlighter capped in her hand. "Are you ready?" she asked, not looking up. "No." I said, "But I'm going in." Lila pulled up behind us in her battered sedan. She stepped out, lighting a cigarette, exhaling a plume of smoke into the winter air. She looked like a sentry. We walked to the front door together. I didn't use my key. I rang the doorbell. It was my house, but I was entering as a process server, not a resident. The door opened. It was Cousin Brenda. She looked haggard, wearing the same sweatpants she had worn yesterday. Her eyes widened when she saw the three of us. "Jenny?" she stammered. "We didn't think you were coming back." "Move, Brenda," I said gently. We stepped into the foyer. The house smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. The living room was packed. My father was sitting in the armchair, my armchair, holding court. He looked tired, his face gray. But he was still talking, still gesturing, still trying to keep the bubble inflated. "She will calm down," he was saying. It was a performance. She likes the drama. I walked into the room. Lila and Marin flanked me. The conversation died instantly. 30 heads turned. "Dad," I said. He looked up. For a second, I saw fear. Then, the mask slid back into place. The benevolent patriarch. "Genesis," he exclaimed, starting to rise. "You are home. I knew you wouldn't stay away on Christmas Eve." "Sit down," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The authority in my voice was absolute. He sat. I stood in front of the fireplace, blocking the warmth, casting a shadow over the room. "I am not here to host," I said. "I am here to deliver a notice." Marin stepped forward and handed a stack of papers to Aunt Sarah, who was sitting nearest to me. "Pass those around." Marin said, "What is this?" Sarah asked. Looking at the document, "It is a formal notice," I said. "It revokes any and all permission for anyone in this room to act on my behalf. It states that Harold Reed is not, and has never been, an authorized agent for my finances. And it states that this gathering is over." I looked at my watch. "It is 10:15. I said, "You have until 12 o'clock to pack your bags and leave my property." The eruption was immediate. "You cannot be serious," Aunt Sarah screamed, throwing the paper on the floor. "It is Christmas Eve. You are kicking out your own blood? Where are we supposed to go?" Cousin Marlowe demanded. "You are heartless," someone shouted from the back. My father stood up. He held up his hands, quieting the room. He looked at me with a sorrowful, pitying smile. "Genesis, Genesis," he sighed. "Look at you. You are spiraling. You are lashing out because you are in pain. I am not in pain." "Dad," I said, "I am in clarity." "You are punishing us," he said, shaking his head. "You are punishing the people who love you because you are scared of intimacy." I looked him in the eye. "This isn't punishment," I said. "This is safety." "Safety?" He scoffed. "From what? From family? From love? From theft?" I said. He flinched, but he recovered quickly. He reached into his jacket pocket, the same jacket he had worn to the restaurant, and pulled out a folded document. "You keep using that word," he said, his voice hardening. "Theft. But you are forgetting something. Jenny, you agreed to this." He waved the paper in the air. "I didn't want to bring this up," he said to the room. "I wanted to protect her dignity, but she leaves me no choice." He looked at Greg, the realtor, who wasn't there, but he addressed the room as if the man were standing beside him. "Genesis agreed to the refinance," he announced. "She signed the intent form back in September. She knew we needed the equity to save the business. She is just getting cold feet now because the reality is scary. But the paperwork doesn't lie. She needs me to manage this because she is too emotional to handle the numbers." A ripple of confusion went through the room. "Is that true?" Aunt Marge asked, looking at me. "Did you sign it?" I didn't answer Marge. I looked at Marin. Marin opened her briefcase. She didn't pull out a folder this time. She pulled out a tablet. She walked over to the television mounted above the fireplace. She connected the tablet to the screen via a cable she had brought. "What are you doing?" my father demanded. "Showing the receipts," Marin said. The screen flickered to life. It showed a PDF document. It was the third-party authorization form my father had just referenced, the one I had supposedly signed in September. "This is the document Harold submitted to the bank," Marin said. "It lists him as an authorized party." "See?" my father shouted. "Proof." Marin swiped the screen. "And this," she said, "is the metadata from the file upload." She pointed to a string of text. The file was created on September 12th, but the signature block? That image file was created in 2022. It was lifted from Genesis's original closing disclosure. Marin looked at the room. "He didn't get her signature," she said. "He copy-pasted it. That is forgery." My father's face went white. "Technicalities," he sputtered. "She told me to do it," she said. "Dad, handle it. I don't want to deal with the paperwork." "Did she?" Marin asked. She tapped the screen again. A video player opened. It was footage from my entryway camera, dated 2 days ago, Tuesday. The room went silent. On the screen, my father was standing in the hallway with Uncle Dale. The audio was crisp. Did she leave the office unlocked? My father asked on the video. Locked. Dale grunted. She probably has the papers in there. The video herald said, We need to find them. If I can just get the deed, I can get Greg to push the appraisal through without her. She never reads the fine print anyway. Is that legal? Dale asked on the recording. Who cares? Video herald snapped. It will be hers to fix anyway. She owes us. Marin paused the video. The freeze frame showed my father's face, twisted in a sneer of contempt. It wasn't the face of a loving father helping a fragile daughter. It was the face of a predator stalking prey. The silence in the living room was absolute. Aunt Sarah looked at the screen, then at my father. She looked sick. You said she agreed. Sarah whispered. You swore she agreed. She did, my father shouted, his voice cracking. In her heart, she agreed. She knows she owes me. He turned to me, his eyes wild. I did it for you, he screamed, to give you a purpose. You are empty, Genesis. You have nothing but your job and your house. I gave you a chance to be a hero. I gave you a family to save. I stared at him. I don't want to be a hero, I said softly, and I don't want to save you. I nodded to Marin. Marin pulled a single document from her briefcase. This is an affidavit, she said. It states that you, Harold Reed, acknowledge that the signature on the authorization form was falsified. It states that you acknowledge opening the North Star loan without Genesis's consent. She placed it on the coffee table. Also, a pen. If you sign this, Marin said, Genesis will not file the police report today. She will allow you to surrender your rights to the accounts quietly. And if I don't? My father snarled. Then I press send, Marin said, holding up her phone. I have the draft email to the district attorney ready to go. The police are 5 minutes away. It is Christmas Eve. Mr. Reed, do you want to spend it in a holding cell? Or do you want to walk out of here? My father looked at the phone. He looked at the family. He saw no allies. Uncle Dale was staring at his boots. Aunt Marge was crying silently into a tissue. Even Cousin Marlowe wouldn't meet his eyes. The audience was gone. The narrative had collapsed. He slumped. Physically, he seemed to shrink, the air rushing out of the suit that he couldn't afford. You are ungrateful, he muttered. Sign it, I said. He picked up the pen. His hand shook. He scratched his name onto the line. It was a messy, angry scrawl. He threw the pen down. Are you happy? He asked. You won. You beat your old man. I didn't feel happy. I felt a profound, heavy exhaustion. Get out, I said. He stood up. He didn't look back. He grabbed his coat and walked to the door. Wait, I said. He stopped, hope flickering in his eyes. Leave the keys, I said, to the truck. The truck? He asked. The one co-signed in my name, I said. You are not driving it. You can call an Uber, or you can walk. But that truck stays here until I can sell it to pay off the loan you took out. He stared at me with pure venom. He dug into his pocket and threw the keys on the floor. They skittered across the hardwood and hit my boot. Merry Christmas, Genesis, he spat. Hope you enjoy being alone. The door slammed behind him. The sound echoed through the house, a final punctuation mark to 30 years of manipulation. I looked at the room. The relatives were frozen. They didn't know what to do. They were waiting for me to scream, or to cry, or to tell them they were all monsters. I took a deep breath. You heard the timeline, I said. 12 o'clock. I walked over to the kitchen island, but, I said, softening my voice just a fraction, I know it is Christmas Eve, and I know some of you didn't know. You were told a lie, and you believed it because you wanted to believe in him. I looked at Aunt Marge. I looked at the younger cousins. If you are here because you want to extract something from me, money, a place to stay, a loan, you need to leave now. I paused. But if you are here because you actually want to be my family, if you want to sit down, watch a movie, drink some cocoa, and not talk about money, business, or Harold Reed, you are welcome to stay until the road's clear. I looked at them. No speeches. I said, no drama. Just cocoa. For a moment, no one moved. Then, Uncle Dale stood up. He picked up his bag. "I should go," he said quietly. "I didn't know. Jenny, but I should have asked." He walked to the door. Aunt Sarah followed him. She didn't apologize. She just couldn't be in a room where her brother was the villain. Cousin Marlowe left, taking his air mattress. One by one, the leeches, the enablers, and the cowards filed out. But Aunt Marge stayed. She walked over to the stove. "I think there is still some milk left," she said, her voice wavering. "For the cocoa." Lila walked over and put an arm around Marge's shoulders. "I will find the marshmallows," Lila said. By 2:00, the house was quiet. There were only 5 of us left. Me, Tessa, who had come over as soon as the cars started leaving, Lila, Aunt Marge, and Marin, who had stayed to ensure the departure was peaceful. We sat in the living room. We watched Elf. We drank cocoa. It wasn't a party. The air was heavy with the ghost of what had just happened, but it was real. Aunt Marge fell asleep in the armchair. Marin left around 3, squeezing my hand at the door. "You did the hard thing," she said. "Now comes the healing thing." I sat on the sofa between Lila and Tessa. The Christmas tree lights blinked in a slow, rhythmic cycle. I felt hollow. He said I would be alone. I whispered. Lila rested her head on my shoulder. He lied about everything else. "Jenny," she said. "Why would he be telling the truth about that?" "You are not alone," Tessa said, pulling a blanket over our legs. "You just cleared out the crowding. Now there is room for the people who actually fit." I looked at the 2 of them, my sister, who had fought this battle before me, my best friend, who had stood guard. I realized then that boundaries don't erase love. They filter it. They catch the debris, the sludge, the toxins, and they let only the clear, clean water pass through. I had less family tonight than I did this morning, but I had more love. Late that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Lila in the guest room, Marge in the other, I sat up in the dark. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I stared at it. It was a text from a number I had blocked, but my voicemail transcription service delivered the message anyway. It was from him. "Harold, can we meet after New Year's?" "No one else. Just us. I have an idea to fix the truck payments. We can work this out." I stared at the words. He hadn't learned. He hadn't changed. He was already spinning the next web, already looking for the next angle. Just us. He wanted to get me alone again. He wanted to restart the cycle. I held the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. A week ago, I would have replied. I would have said no, or why, or please stop. I would have engaged. But the woman who sat in the dark on Christmas Eve was not the same woman who had opened the door 3 days ago. I didn't reply. I didn't block him again. I didn't need to. I simply deleted the thread. I turned off the phone. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow had stopped. The moon was out, turning the world into a landscape of silver and shadow. I wasn't waiting for him to change anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I was done waiting. I turned away from the window, away from the driveway, away from the past. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and for the first time in my life, I locked it not out of fear, but out of peace. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey into the dark side of family obligation and the light of finding your own voice. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with a family member during the holidays? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed Genesis's victory, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, karma, and taking back control. Share your thoughts in English, and I will see you in the next story.